Welcome to the HigherEdJobs Podcast. I'm Andy Hibble, the Chief Operating Officer and one of the co-founders of HigherEdJobs.
And I'm Kelly Sherwin, the Director of Editorial Strategy. Today, we're happy to have Chris Lee back for our Ask the Expert series. Thanks, Chris, for joining us today.
My pleasure.
So our question today is, how long should I stay in a leadership position before moving to another role within the same university? I have an opportunity to make a lateral move to another department, but I am unsure whether to apply. Chris, what are your thoughts on this?
Yes. Well, this is what all of our conversations are about career growth and change, finding the right position. So this is a good one. There's two ways I like to think about it. It has to be really kind of an internal view of how you see your career, as well as how others, kind of see your career. For yourself, it's usually things like the economics, right? Is this going to meet my financial obligations and expectations? Also, how you feel about a particular opportunity. And then the third factor, is related to how it's going to help your career, is going to help you learn and grow and things like that. So changing a job is not just one factor. It's usually a lot of different stuff. We'll take the easy one first. If you got the, new child, or you got new obligations, or you're like me trying to pay for college tuition here, since, that is the case for a lot of people, and you might have to earn more money, then, if it's a greater opportunity that has more remuneration, it makes sense. That's an easy one. But barring that, you have to think about, does this position help me learn something new, help build my skills, and does it help my career trajectory over time? Every now and then, taking a lateral move actually is a good idea because it helps flesh things out. Sometimes it's changing a job to learn something specific that's important for your particular career environment and where you kind of want to go. And sometimes it's just your profession. So I got some colleagues at an accounting firm, and it's kind of like an up or out environment, meaning that either you grow or you're considered stagnant and you're not promotable. So in those environments, you have to take opportunities because it's a kind of a career culture, or whatever the case may be. So those are about learning and growing and being able to contribute. So that's kind of that other big factor about learning. And then the final one is, how do you feel about it? Is it a good environment for you? Where you are, you may have a great supervisor. You may have great colleagues. You may really enjoy what you're doing, and you don't want to necessarily change, because change in and of itself creates lots of dynamics. So even if you're changing on campus, your commute might change. If you're at a big university, you got to go to the other side of the university. The parking might be different. The buildings might be different. The work hours today is really different, where some departments can telework, some can't. The hours and expectations. So there's a whole lot of factors that kind of disrupt your life. But those three buckets kind of, for me, define how you should think about it from an internal perspective, meaning your internal view about taking on a new opportunity.
I like how you explain all those factors. And I have kind of a piggyback question on this original question when they asked, how long should you stay in a leadership position? Fast forwarding, I don't know, say 5-10 years down the road, and this person has their resume. Is there, I don't think there's a hard, fast rule of like, do you have to stay in a position for a year before you can apply for another one? Like, right, I think people are maybe hesitant to, like, they don't want to be this job hopper. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes. So the external view keeps that in mind, how people view your career. Question is, how long do you stay in a position? I've never seen anything that's a standard, but I think overall 3 to 5 years is kind of what people sort of expect, at least people with gray hair, right? Because I've seen, the younger generations think 2 years is enough to have established, or 3 years. I'll never forget a gentleman who worked for me. He found another opportunity, and he knew I was going to come to him and talk to him about it, right? So I heard, from his direct supervisor, I was a supervisor, and I come to his office. He goes, oh, yes, as a matter of fact, he graduated from the master's program where I teach also, kind of part-time. So, I've known him for a while. I come into his office and he goes, come on, Chris, man, I gave you 2 good years. Like, he was so proud. He was like, man, I know why you're here to talk to me about this. And I'm thinking, man, 2 years, I just trained you.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't really gotten ROI from all this investment and time in you. You're just getting kind of fully competent in the role. But the younger generations today, they see it differently. Now, the risk with that is they also miss opportunities because gray-haired people and, level-headed people might say on the other end, they might say, hey, this person has moved multiple times and I know they're only going to be here for 2 years. So I won't even interview them because I don't think they will stick and stay. So I think that's the downside of moving too much, right? Now, there's some incentives to do so because the research shows the more you move, the greater likelihood you'll get a higher pay because you wouldn't necessarily move for less pay. So the pattern favors it. However, I think you miss as many opportunities as you gain by being a job hopper. I would recommend 3 at minimum. And then even if you do change in less than that, 2 together is more damaging if it were 3 years here, 6 years here, or 5 years here, and then 3 years again, right? That is not necessarily seen as job hopping. The point is that if there's a pattern, hiring managers will react. So I think that's the key for anyone who's thinking about it.
I would probably offer one caveat off of that. And I definitely would have been a job hopper in your estimation. I would offer, I think it might vary a little bit from department to department. Some of the more popular categories of departments on higher ed jobs, I can tell you there's lots of jobs, lots of opportunity, and a lot of movement. I'm thinking of student affairs and advancement positions that people do move around.
Yeah.
So I think that the 3 years is not a bad rule of thumb. I would then also see what's acceptable where you are. There's some places where you're right. It might be 3 to 5 years before you really hit your stride in a more complex position. And there's not a lot of movement, then you probably should stay. I think with this question, I think one of the questions that if you wrote it, I'd really like you to be asking yourself is, why are you doing it? I'd love what you went through, Chris. If it's greater pay, if it's more responsibilities. I'm always fearful in lateral moves that you're trying to escape something, then move to something.
Yeah.
I think if you're not moving to something, a lateral move within the same institution always feels like a really, really risky move because the grass isn't always greener on the other side. And you can't do that again. You make that move once, you're now stuck in it. And the part I'm always worried about is your career story. When people ask you about why you made the choices you made, how are you going to explain it? Does it make sense? Does your story fit the reality of your resume? And if you do some of these lateral moves and they don't quite work out, they're really difficult to explain to employers. And also, I think raises red flags on the job, if you will, the job hopper title.
Yeah.
That said, if you're a Gen Xer or above generation wise, you didn't feel a lot of loyalty from institutions like some of your parents and grandparents felt, but you felt some. I would say it might differ if you're a Gen Z or a millennial right now and you're looking at institutions and you're not necessarily feeling the loyalty you think that the Xers and above felt. I would say in those instances, you have to make the right career choice for you, but do so for the right reasons. Is it a great opportunity?
Yeah.
Because I think those things always ring true when you start telling your career story. I went to this position because I was excited about doing this. I went to this position because I was being paid significantly more. I went to this position because I wanted to move back and be closer to my family because my parents were aging. Those parts of those stories, I think, speak well to you as a candidate and a person. And I think they're going to reinforce any future employer's evaluation of you on the type of person that they're hiring. When those things don't necessarily fit, I think they can create a red flag based on your career story.
Yeah, I like that phraseology, career story. But let me double down on your caveat about, moving, that I think you're right. If certain professions like, accounting, student affairs, others, there's rapid change early career, right? And then it kind of mellows out later because there are opportunities there and there's a natural, predictable career ladder, right? And so that is certainly the case. And if it's not in those professions, one should, and you're promotable, right? You've moved a lot because people see talent in you, you got some great skills and you're moving up. Then one should cover that in their cover letter, right? Because otherwise that perception might be, the job hopping thing. But if you, talent rises to the top. So, if you 2 years, and you're just knocking it out of the park, great. But say that I was recruited, I was promoted, et cetera, et cetera. Give reasons for that so that others come to the right conclusion, not make an assumption about your background.
That's well put.
Yeah. And then one more point. I'm sorry, Kelly.
Oh, I was going to say, I'm not going to triple down and try to go back on either one. I like both what you said there. So
yeah. So the phrasing of the question left something open for interpretation because it said leadership position. And sometimes that means supervisor, sometimes it means manager, sometimes it means executive. So you just want to make the note that if it's an executive position, usually if you're inside of an organization and you're moving to an executive position, it's usually because others have recognized one's talent. So it's not like you're applying for a job across campus into an executive position. Usually someone's sponsoring you or endorsing you because those are highly challenging and volatile, heady, time-consuming, commitment-oriented positions, and not everyone succeeds. So usually you want a proven person there. And, leaders tend to be kind of conservative on who they select. And it's really a talent market. So usually in those environments, someone has to kind of sponsor you and say, Kelly does great or Mike does great or whatever the case may be. And when you apply, it's received warmly. But if you're just an average Joe or average Jane and you apply for an executive position and no one knows of your track record, chances are a lot lower. So that's just kind of a caveat to the question because it said, opportunity for another department. It was a leadership position. So wasn't sure if they're talking about management being a lot different than executive.
Thank you for that.
Thanks, Chris. That was excellent advice. And thank you for listening. And if you have a question for Chris or one of our other experts, please email us at podcast@higheredjobs.com or direct message us on X @HigherEdCareers. We look forward to talking soon.